CBSE Board, Class 11, History, Chapter 4, Part 13, Audio by Renee Matthew. The consent of the natives was not at all taken for these settlers to come and settle in these places. The western frontier of the USA was a shifting one, which meant that sometimes the natives will be found there, sometimes immigrants will come to this place. The western frontier was a happening place, and sometimes the natives were also pushed to just move back or even go out of this territory. So this particular point is important, that the western frontier of the USA was a happening place. It was a place where so much of shifting took place. Okay, now we need to look at the landscapes. The landscape of America changed drastically. There was a kind of overt change in the 19th century regarding the landscape of America. The Europeans treated the land in a very different way from the natives. They treated it very differently, especially when it came to the concern of the natives. Some of the migrants from Britain and France were younger sons who would not inherit their father's property. They did not want to inherit their father's property, especially people who came from Britain and France to America. So they were very eager to land in America. They were not interested in the inheritance which was passed down from one generation to another over the years. There was a lot of immigrants which came and settled here. Almost the term that is given here is the waves of immigrants which came from countries like Germany, Sweden, Italy. They also lost their lands to big farmers. When they came from Europe, what will happen to the land that they had? Some of them did not have any interest in the land, which was a possession of their fathers. They did not want to inherit. They just came and settled in America. But some of them had to just lose their land holdings to the bigger people of the country, especially the landowners. They just lost it to the bigger farmers or landowners. And after that, we can see that people from Poland were very happy to work in the prairie grasslands. They had a kind of association with these grasslands, and they found so much of joy and happiness in working in the prairie grasslands. And this reminded them of the steppes of their homes, because their origin itself was the steppes. They were very happy to work here in the prairie grasslands, and they were very excited to buy huge properties at a very low price compared to the steppes of their homes. This particular grassland was available at a very low price. So what they did is they started clearing land, and they started developing agriculture at a very rapid pace, and they also introduced crops, especially rice and cotton, and this could not grow in Europe. So therefore they were not able to sell this for profit. It was not growing in Europe. So after clearing the land, they cultivated this, and it could not grow in Europe, and therefore could be sold there for profit. Okay, in Europe they could not find rice and cotton, so from here they used to cultivate and sell it in Europe with much profit. So we can understand that after coming or after shifting to America, it was not only profitable, but also they were happy with the life here in America, with the flexibility of life, with the opportunities that they had in America. So to protect their huge farms, after coming here as immigrants, of course they had possession of very big farms, and they started becoming very rich, and they had to protect their farm from wild animals, especially the wolves, the mountain lions, and there were a lot of animals which were close to endanger. Okay, they were endangered species also. When they started hunting these animals for food purpose, it neared to extinction. Okay, they felt very secure, especially with the invention of the barbed wire in 1873. They invented the barbed wire, and it was like they felt very secure because of that. The climate of the southern region, especially in America, was very hot for the Europeans. Europe was a country which experienced winter, extreme winter. Even here it is like that, but initially they found it very difficult to stay here, especially for the Europeans. The climate was very hot, especially to work in outdoors. And you should remember that most of them were farmers. They had to be outdoors, which was a bit difficult for them initially. And the experience which they had in the South American colonies it taught a lesson to the natives who were enslaved. They actually died in large numbers. Okay, many people were able to understand, especially the natives, that because the immigrants came here, because the immigrants were coming to this place constantly, they understood that their own natives were endangered and that the natives were dying also. So look at the condition. The picture clearly shows the work that is happening in the plantations and also the grasslands. Now we have to talk about the owners in the plantation. They started buying slaves in Africa. Protest and anti-slavery groups led to a great ban on slave trade. It actually led to a great ban on slave trade because of the protest and because of the anti-slavery group. But the Africans who were in the USA remained slaves. In spite of the big ban on slave trade, the Africans who resided in USA still remained slaves, as did their children. Just like that, just like they were continuing to be slaves, just as they continued to be in their shatters, in their bondage of the colonized era, till they were freed from the colonized people. It was like they remained as slaves, as did their children. So that was a condition which they passed to their children also. Nothing could free them from this bondage. The northern states of USA. What about this particular stretch? There actually the economy did not depend on plantations. They did not have any direct dependence or they did not even have an inclination on the plantations, and they also did not promote slavery there, because only the slavery kind of prevailed only in places where they depended on plantation, and they also argued for ending slavery. The northern states of the USA were against slavery and they wanted to put an end to slavery, and they always condemned it as an inhuman practice where you keep human beings in bondage, in fetters. So from 1861 to 65, there was a big war which took place between the states that wanted to retain slavery and the states which really wanted to abolish slavery. So supporting abolition and not supporting abolition. So the later means people who supported the abolition actually won. So no more of slavery. We can see that over the years many people wanted to put a ban. Even the government, even the constitution had declared a ban. They even passed a law. Do you remember that? But the great landowners and the aristocratic group of the country did not support that. They forced the government to actually resume this condition. So as a result of that, slavery was abolished. Though it took place only in the 20th century, African Americans were able to win the battle for civil liberties. Just for the purpose of civil liberties, they were able to win the battle very recently. And there was a great segregation between the whites and the non-whites, especially in schools and public transport system. Even now we can see the kind of demarcation that they have between the whites and the non-whites. It is a prevailing problem in America even now. So even in schools and public places, we can hear of people speaking about the marginalization and the kind of attitude that they show on the whites and the non-whites, the preference that they give. Now we need to speak about the Canadian government. They had a problem which was not solved for a very long time. What was that problem? It seemed very urgent than the question of the natives. In 1763, Canada had been won by the British after a war with France. The Britishers fought with the French people. That was a kind of situation which lasted for many years and was not solved. So now Canada was won by the Britishers after a war with France. The French settlers, they demanded autonomous political status. They wanted to be free from all the other grip and hold. They wanted to rule autonomously. It was in 1867 that this particular problem was solved by organizing Canada as a confederation of autonomous states. So French settlers only demanded all these things. So after a war with France only, they kind of decided that they are going to have Canada for themselves, the Britishers. So French settlers means people who migrated from France and settled in Canada. So these people, they said that, see, we are French people and we are living under you, and already you know that there was a great hostility which existed between the Britishers and the French people, right? So now they understood that they were colonized by the Britishers and they have to live under the grip of the Britishers, though they were not Americans. So they said that we are a majority here and we would like to rule ourselves as an autonomous state, and that is how Canada was formed. It's actually, their origin is French people. It was formed out of the French settlers, and we know that the official language there was French. Okay, so they developed themselves or evolved themselves as the Confederation of Autonomous States. Which one? Canada. Now, how the native people lost their land. How do they lose their land? That is what we are going to see. In the USA, we know that the settlement expanded. The natives were induced or forced to move as usual. They were asked to get out of the place after signing treaties, selling their land. They were forced to sign treaties and also to sell their own land, which they preserved for a very long time. The prices paid were very low. Whatever price they got for their land was very low, and there were some instances when the Americans, okay, now the term American is used to mean the European people of the USA. European people who migrated from Europe and came and settled in US, I told you earlier. So these people cheated them. These people actually cheated the natives by taking more land or paying less than promised. So it was actually the Europeans themselves, but they became Americans because they came from Europe and settled here. So what can we understand from this particular passage? We can understand that whites means their basic origin is from Europe. It is not from America. The Americans, the Native Americans, were actually a different groups. The tribals like Arawaks, Incas, and so many other people were there. We saw how they were defeated, how they just fell down. So the Europeans who came here called themselves Americans, and they cheated. They cheated the natives and they asked them to move out of the place. They pushed them away and they wanted a territory for themselves. Even high officials were not able to help the natives, and they did not feel it quite wrong to deprive the native peoples of their land. They said it's okay, you can just push them off. And this is actually an episode which happened in Georgia, which is a state in USA. Many people came like that and many of them were cheated. So officials actually argued that there was a tribe by the name Cherokee. The Cherokee tribe was governed by state laws. They came under the state laws directly. They were not able to enjoy the rights of citizens at all. Okay, though they were the natives of this place, they were not allowed to enjoy the rights of citizens. This was because of the fact that all the native people, the Cherokees, were the ones who had made the most effort to learn English. They were deprived, but still they made lot of effort to learn English, and they were not able to enjoy the right of citizens, but still they were able to prolong this unfavorable condition, and they understood the American way of life. American way of life means the Europeans who came from other places and settled in North America. So they were not allowed the rights of citizens, though they were trying to mingle with the Americans who came and settled there. Now we need to understand about the characteristics of this tribe, which is the Cherokees. In 1832, there was an important judgment which was passed by the US Chief Justice John Marshall. What he told is that the Cherokees were not to be compared to the other tribes. They were a distinct community. They occupied their own territory in which the laws of Georgia had no force. They did not come under the state laws of Georgia. We should allow them to have their own laws and they should operate independently, and they had sovereignty in certain matters because they were very old tribes and they were the natives to Americans. So that is why they were given some priority there. So this is the dress and the culture of the Cherokees, quite colorful, and these are the natives of America. I don't know whether you can find these tribes even now, but they actually belonged to the land and they were cheated. So US President Andrew Jackson, he had a great reputation because he was fighting against the economic and political privilege which when it came to the Indians. He was a different person. He supported these people. They were known as the Red Indians, right? We call them Red Indians. So he was a person who supported the cause for natives, and he was a person who was different from all the other officials who supported the Americans, that is a white, and he wanted to have some rights, that is economic and political privileges for the Cherokees. Now we have to look into more factors of the Cherokees which will come in the upcoming audios. So please stay tuned.